You may be seated. I'll share with you a quick piece of Torah this morning. The upshot of what I want to say today is very simple, and that is what's important to some people may not be important to others, but that doesn't matter. What matters is we have to care about what other people care about, not just what we care about. The important message is that sometimes in lives there will be moments in which there is something that's going on in our world that we feel has nothing to do with us, that doesn't absolve us of our responsibility to care for what other people care about as well. It can't only be about what's important to me, it has to be about what's important to other people. And so this morning's parsha offers us this really wonderful moment in which the Jewish people start to complain about something that for some would seem inconsequential, for some would seem entitled, for some it would seem to be just complaining for the sake of complaining. This morning's parsha begins with a wonderful moment in which the Jewish people are complaining about the manna. So you know the story is very simple. The Jewish people leave Egypt and they find themselves on the road to freedom in the promised land. And immediately they start to complain that there isn't anything to eat in the desert, that they were going to die in that land, in that barren wasteland. And Moses talks to God, and God says, I have a solution for that. I had already written this into the script. We learned in Pirkei Avot that there were a number of things that God had created just before Erev Shabbat because God knew that there was going to be complaints. And so already built into the system were corrections. And one of those corrections was the manna. And that is that God said, okay, I'll provide you with this substance that will taste like whatever you want it to taste like. It will have whatever texture you want it to have, and you'll be able to enjoy that. I know it's not tofu, but it seems to be something like tofu. And so what's interesting to me is this experience of the Jewish people complaining now about the manna. And that is, it's sickening to eat the same thing over and over, day after day, even though if you ask my dog Tamale, who has the same food every day, and I never hear her complain about it. The truth is that monotony does breed a certain amount of discontent. And so the same food over and over again, because we are a people that loves variety, because as human beings we like an expression that's creative, that of course we want to eat something different than just manna. And so the Jewish people complain. And instead of Moses responding to the Jewish people, you asked for food, I gave you food, and now it's not enough, Moses does what a great leader would do. He doesn't become defensive. He doesn't become angry. He says, Vayishma Moshe ta'am bochel mishpechotav, that Moses heard their complaint. And so the lesson is incredibly important in this first example of this morning's parsha of great leadership. But more than great leadership, a study in being human is to simply listen to people where they are, regardless of what our own perspective is. To listen, to carefully understand what people are going through. Moses goes and speaks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says the Jewish people, they're upset. And I imagine it's not just about food, it's about the monotony of the desert experience. And it has a lot more to do than just food. It has to do with the crisis under which the Jewish people are feeling at this moment in the desert experience. Will there ever be an escape from the same experience day after day? Will there ever be an opportunity to burst out into their own creativity and their own capacity to sustain their own lives rather than handouts? Because they understand that that is a life that still is enslaved. If I can't earn my own living, says the Jewish people, if I can't make my own food, then I will forever be entrapped in the system. And Moses' response as a leader and as a human being is Vayishma Moshe, Moses heard. Let me share another example with you of a moment of great leadership, but also of great humanity. In this week's parsha, again, we have another experience there are two people who step forward into the camp of Israel, and they start to prophesy. They start to tell of what could be for the Jewish people, the greatness that is within their capacity, the ability to rise up from this moment. And here is what it says. There were these two who were prophesying in the camp, two guys named Eldad and Medad. Vayomer lo Moshe hamikaned li umiyitin kol ha'am Adonai nevi'im ki yitain Adonai et ruach alehem. And somebody comes to Moses and complains, there are these two people who are challenging your leadership. They're standing in your place. They're taking over your job. They're prophesying among the Jewish people. And Moses' response, Vayomer lo Moshe. Moses' response to them is, would that everyone was a prophet. How great would it be if everybody in the community could bring a message of hope. It doesn't have to be just me. I don't have to be the center of attention, says Moses. Other people can take on the mantle of leadership as well. Would that we had more leaders in our country, in our community, in our people. Then the burden of leadership wouldn't rest on one singular individual, and we could emerge from this moment of crisis in the desert experience a better people. Would that everyone was a prophet and brought a message of hope to the people. Moses' response isn't to be defensive. It isn't to be combative. It isn't to say, I am the singular, only voice that knows the solution to every problem. Rather, Moses says, wouldn't it be great if there were so many people around that could help in this process of liberation of the Jewish people? Wouldn't it be great if we could call on experts to assist in this process of bringing the Jewish people from slavery to freedom, from bondage to Holy Land? One more example. Wouldn't it be great if this was true as well? Moses has a moment in this week's Parsha in which he is personally attacked by his own flesh and blood, by his sister Miriam, who complains about his choice in wife. And God becomes so angry at an attack on his faithful servant that God strikes Miriam with leprosy. And God's response is one that is understandable. God and Moses have been in this together. How dare someone attack Moses? But Moses' response is far more divine than even God's. Vayitzak Moshe Adonai, and Moses, upon seeing his sister stricken with a death illness, he calls out to Adonai, Lemor Elna Rifana La, God, please heal her. Moses teaches us in this week's Parsha 3 critical lessons about leadership, but not leadership only, about what it means to be a human being. When you see people suffering, the answer isn't to inflict more punishment on them, but rather to pray for them. Elna Rifana La, in 5 exquisite words, all Moses has to say is, God, do me a favor, please heal her. This morning, Moses teaches us a lesson of what it means to be a human being. He says, first, listen to people. Don't attack. Second is defend those who speak out in the community. Don't attack. And finally, when there are those in your midst who are suffering, pray for them, advocate for them. Don't attack. Small-minded people, ill-equipped people, in moments of crisis, sink to the lowest denominator. True human beings rise up in those moments, and they hear, they listen, they defend, and they advocate for those who don't have the capacity to defend and advocate for themselves. Moses says, Elna Rifana La, God, please heal her. And in this moment of crisis in our country, I say the same thing, Elna Rifana Lanu, God, please heal us all. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf. page 184, the Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba v'yalem adivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayedecho Beit Yisrael